So let's go.
He said, no way.
There's
Not from
no.
all these people's. No. Come on, guys.
Why do I still have this thing? Like it just pops up again. But then it's like okay. Maybe would you like to? No? All right. I think so. All right. Board members, are we ready to go?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, I will now reconvene this meeting, the Williamsburg-James City County School Board. Can I have a board member certify closed session, please?
Madam Chair, I certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, the Williamsburg-James City County School Board, while in closed session, discussed only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements as stated in Virginia law, and that only such public matters were identified in the motion convening the closed or motions convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hundley.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Hundley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortega.
Aye. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Hundley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Chen.
Mrs. Hundley.
Aye.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortega.
Aye. All right. You'll do it. Mr. Riffle, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Please stand if you're able.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, we will move on to some announcements, some important announcements tonight, and I will turn it over to Dr. Keever to give us first a cybersecurity update and then a superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Williamsburg-James City County Public Schools noticed network disruptions to our system around February 9th and then immediately engaged outside cybersecurity experts who determined that, like many divisions across the country, WJCC had become the victim of a cybersecurity incident. Together with these experts and our internal tech team, we secured our systems and fully restored our operations on or about February 14th. We are also collaborating with local, state, and federal law enforcement to aid in the investigations of this criminal activity. We're grateful that this incident did not impact the physical safety of our campuses. Our students and teachers were able to engage in unplugged learning while our internet access and other systems were being restored. Out of an abundance of caution and because we value the privacy of our employees and students, we are proactively going to provide them with free credit monitoring and identity restoration services for 1 year. We do not have evidence that any personal information is being used maliciously, but we want to reassure our community with confidence and tools to protect themselves. We will also provide best practices for protecting identity provided by our legal counsel. Emails to our staff and families will go out after this meeting with formal letters coming to them in the coming days from Kroll, K-R-O-L-L, which is a leading provider of identity restoration services. The safety of our community, WJCC, and the learning experience for our students are critical to us, and we are using this incident as an opportunity to improve our cybersecurity posture. We appreciate your support. Madam Chair, I can also go on with the rest of the superintendent's report if you'd like for me to.
Sure.
We are calling all of our teachers. WJCC Schools is hiring for the 25-26 school year. We're looking for caring, collaborative educators, and we encourage you to join us at War Hill High School on Monday, March 3rd from 2 to 5 p.m. for our job fair. On-site interviews will be conducted and conditional job offers will be made to qualified candidates. If you're not a current teacher but dreaming of a career in education, we've got just the thing for you. Career switchers and individuals with bachelor's degrees are encouraged to come out and learn about iTeach, a fully reimbursed pathway to a teaching license while working in the classroom. Next in our announcement, or my announcement this evening, is the Family Academy will be welcoming next year's kindergarten families to WJCC Schools. Join the Zoom webinar, Kindergarten Kickoff, Your Guide to a Great Start, on March 19th at 6 p.m. to begin the countdown to kindergarten. During this webinar, participants will receive information about the kindergarten registration process, including eligibility criteria, necessary documentation, specific health requirements, and transportation information. Additionally, the webinar will feature a question and answer session and a chance to win WJCC swag. Participants will have a sneak peek of what to expect at our kindergarten registration Family Fest, which is occurring in April, and we think this opportunity promises to be both informative and fun. We ask that you visit wjccschools.org to register. Thank you, Madam Chair. This concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Kiever. And I want to say just really briefly in response to the cybersecurity update we had, we know that that was something that was disconcerting for many families and staff. And we just got a briefing from people who were working on it with outside counsel, and they assured us that our IT team and our executive team were excellent, and that everything that they had backups and all their plans actually made it so that we were able to come up back on the network a lot faster than other school divisions that this has happened to. And so while it's unfortunate and it's been very inconvenient, do rest assured that it was extremely well handled and taken care of, and we will continue to approach it that way. So in addition to superintendent's report, I think we have a report from Ms. Chen, and if there are any other board members with reports, just signal to me. Okay, Ms. Chen?
We had our monthly Special Education Advisory Committee meeting last week, and I just wanted to highlight for everybody here and also for the listening public and my board colleagues, just to highlight that next month is March is Disability Awareness Month, and so our Special Education Advisory Committee just wanted to say thank you to them for helping us, advising us, as well as promoting a lot of the activities that will be going on. And I also want to say thank you to all of our, today it's great to see so many of our teachers here and our building administrators who will also be helping us bring awareness to disabilities this month and throughout the year. Just wanted to highlight some events, some community events that might be exciting for families and students to participate in. There is the Family Festival Day that SEAC is highly involved with planning. If you want to mark your calendar, it is March 15th. It will take place at Lafayette High School. And it is, it's really a family festival day to celebrate all families coming together and to bring awareness to all disabilities, inclusivity, and to celebrate and promote that in our community. And then there's another community event that's being hosted at the Williamsburg Regional Library, March 30th. So we'd love to invite families and community members to come and watch the Intelligent Lives movie together. That will be at 1:30, and there will also be a discussion following the movie. And there's also in our consent agenda tonight, there's more details about more events that are happening next month for disability awareness. So I encourage everybody to just take a look at that and have conversations at home around promoting disability awareness.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. All right, we will now move on to the exciting part of our evening where we have staff recognition. And Ms. Chen, will you join me on the floor?
Absolutely.
Good evening, Madam Chair. The WJCC Schools Teacher of the Year program allows us to honor exceptionally skilled and committed teachers who demonstrate excellence in the classroom. Each school's Teacher of the Year is selected by peers for their outstanding classroom instruction and leadership. These teachers embody WJCC Schools' core values of individualism, integrity, innovation, accountability, and collaboration. Tonight, we are honored to recognize 17 of the division's outstanding teachers. Though not all recipients could join us this evening, we want to celebrate each honoree. As your name is called Teacher of the Year, please come forward to be recognized. From Bright Beginnings, Jennifer Grizel. From DJ Montague, Shannon Medema. From JJ Blayton, Angela Gogo. From James River, Erin Roughton. From Laurel Lane, Rachel Smith. From Matoka, Melissa Murphy. From Matthew Whaley, Aaron Sexton. From Norge, Kate Ressler. From Stonehouse, Sherry Spalthoff. From Berkeley, Nat Elliott. From James Blair, Jennifer Kleppeis. From Hornsby, Cindy Margiotta. From Lafayette, Brady Wilhide. From Moore Jennifer Brungett. Our middle school level Teacher of the Year from Tawano, Rebecca Nixon. Our elementary school level Teacher of the Year from Clara Bird Baker, Megan Logan. And finally, High School Teacher of the Year and WJCC Schools Division Teacher of the Year from Jamestown High School, Amanda Mullane. Congratulations to each of you for being named Teacher of the Year for your school, the 3 level winners, and the WJCC Schools Division Teacher of the Year. We appreciate all that you do to help our students and schools be successful. One second.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Hold for everybody else.
It'll be posted on social media.
In the month of February, the Virginia School Board Association acknowledges the School Board Clerk Appreciation Week. And this is the time during the year when we take moments to honor our school board clerk, Ms. Beth Aller. Beth does so much behind the scenes for us that it is uncountable, and we could never even begin to outline all the things that she does that we see, and I think a lot of the things that we don't see. Beth organizes our agendas. She keeps all of our meetings. She reminds us to do our various activities and sign-offs, and she's just one of the most organized and dedicated people that we have ever had, and I've had the pleasure of working with. And so today, we just want to honor Beth for all that you do for us and for the school board and the division. Thank you. Madam Chair, this concludes recognitions for this evening.
Yes, I want to reiterate that none of this would happen, any of it, without Ms. Beth Aller. And she's not only excellent at what she does, but she's an extremely pleasant person to work with, which makes a huge difference because we have to interact so much, and it's always a joy to talk to her. So we will move on to our school spotlight. This evening we get to hear from Matoka Elementary School.
Cardinals.
Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, and Dr. Keever. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. We have several wonderful things occurring at Matoka, from our Legos robotics team success in its first full year of competitions to our 5th grade and its 10% growth in its SOL science scores. Great things are happening at Matoka. But I am excited to share with you another great thing happening at our school. This year, we started our reset room. Through the wonderful support of and guidance of our school counselors, the Reset Room was created to help students needing emotional and behavioral support throughout the day. In its first year, the program is seeing a lot of success in supporting all students. As you will see, Matoka's Reset Room provides its students with an environment that is structured and safe to help students learn to work through emotional challenges during their day and to take what they learn and apply it to the school.
We are in the Reset Room. Reset Room is a place in our school that's dedicated to emotional regulation. Any student can come to the Reset Room. They can request to take a break. This is a place for students to calm themselves and also to learn from the actions that maybe led to them coming to the Reset Room. It's not a discipline thing. It's not a consequence. It's a support.
When you're mad or something, sad, you can come here with the counselor or someone and just help calm down your feelings, maybe.
We want students in class, so they come in here, they take a brief break, and they go back to class. And we have a range of tools that are here. They might look like toys, but they really are tools to help students identify their emotions.
Okay. And I want to feel.
Sometimes it's hard to put the word to the feeling.
Glorious.
And then we have some tools to help them with their breathing, and we have tools to help them calm down to get back to the green zone.
He's awesome.
I usually just maybe jump on the trampoline to get all like the energy out and the excitement out so I can stay calm.
I am a kind and capable learner.
I'm a kind and capable learner.
It's important that you know how to identify your feeling and what you need and how to get yourself to a place where you feel comfortable. And that doesn't have to be that you're happy and smiling, but you do need to be able to know how to take a deep breath and how to be in control of your emotions so that you make good choices and that you can have a good day. I want students to learn that even though they might not be in control of what happens to them, they are in control of how they respond. Students are learning things in the reset room that they're going to take with them the rest of their lives. They're life skills.
I kind of do it at my home sometimes. My brother's annoying me, and he just like messes with me. I go outside on my trampoline.
As you can see, we're very excited about this new program, and we are learning throughout the year of how we can improve and make it even better as we move into our second year. Thank you.
Mr. Knowles, we thank you for sharing that with us, and we also thank your staff that we recognize from the video standing back there for all your hard work. All right, we will now move on to public comment, and I will turn it over to Mrs. Donner to read instructions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is at this point in our meeting where citizens are invited to address the board. Those citizens desiring to speak have submitted speaker cards to the clerk prior to the start of tonight's meeting. These speakers are asked to come to the podium when their names are called, state their names for the record, and direct their comments to the chair of the board. It is the board's interest and desire that all comments are heard and respected. Hence, the citizens are asked to not engage in applauding, verbal outbursts, or any audible demonstrations during the speaker presentations. Personnel matters are not considered in public meetings, therefore the board requests that all speakers refrain from making reference to specific individuals in any form or fashion. Though the board does not respond to your comments are heard and appreciated. Each speaker is allocated 2 minutes to make their presentation, and the board asks that you respect this time limitation. Also, please be reminded that no time may be yielded to another speaker. Your acceptance and adherence to these guidelines will be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Madam Chair, and my directions are concluded.
Thank you, Mrs. Donner, and we do have a higher volume of speakers than normal, so the 2-minute time limit will be strictly enforced across the board. It's not personal. When I hear that sound, I'm going to thank you, and you will be done. Any written remarks that don't get to be fully read, or if you have additional remarks, you can turn into the clerk, and they will be sent to us.
And I'm going to call 3 at a time so we can keep it moving. Our first speaker will be Joe Catterin, followed by Jada McFadden and Elizabeth Berkey.
Good evening, school board. My name is Joe. I live in Williamsburg. I'm with the Campaign for Honorable and Inclusive School Names, and I wanted to thank you all for taking up our request to rename James Blair Middle, and for the courage and leadership of school board members who have helped us to move this forward. I would like to thank the community members who have come out tonight to speak in favor of renaming James Blair so that we can move forward from the legacy of slavery that he represents. And I want to thank my organizer, Mary. None of this would have been possible without her. I did want to just say a couple more things about it, which is, first of all, I think it would be a shame if, the school name changed and we just moved on and forgot it was ever named James Blair. I think that the school division owes it to the students and to parents in the community to educate people about the history of the naming of the school. It was named the same year that Brown versus the Board of Education Supreme Court ruling was passed, and so it really does mean a lot in terms of our transition from segregation to integrated school system. And then I also just want to urge y'all during the renaming, as you form a committee to rename the school, school names impact the whole community, not just people who attend the school or who are parents of children at the school. So I think it would be great if the school division could include as much of the community as possible when it comes to renaming the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Catterin.
Jaden McFadden.
Good evening, members of the school board, parents, and community members. I stand before you today to ask for the renaming of James Blair Middle School and Magruder Elementary School. James Blair used slaves as an incentive to get people to come over from England with the promise of slaves making life easy. He also used slaves to build the College of William and Mary that he founded. Magruder named after General Magruder, who burnt down the town of Hampton during the Civil War, not because of the Union, but because he didn't want enslaved African Americans to occupy the town. This is more than just a change of signage. This is a declaration that deeply affects Black students in our sense of belonging. For many students of color, school isn't just a place of education. It's a space where we can form our identity, find community, and feel seen. The names of these schools carry history, meanings, and triumphs. Having these names without considering the impact on Black students in slave erases the history that sends a message that our voices and experience don't matter. Too often we see that declarations are made without meaningful input from every student who is affected and walk through these doors every morning. These names have disregarded the emotional and cultural significance these names hold. It's not just about tradition, it's about respect. If this board truly values diversity and inclusion, then it must also value the perspectives of Black students. I urge you to change the names of these schools and engage with the students, families, and community members in a way that acknowledges our history rather than erasing it and finding a new and better name for these schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Berkey, and she will be followed by Susan Franz, Chris Henderson, and Ellen Parm.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Berkey, and thank you for giving me the chance to speak tonight. I just wanted to thank you for your comments. I just want you to know that you inspire me, and I wish that when I was your age, I had had half the bravery.
She has to speak to
that
Ma'am?
you have.
Ma'am.
We can't hear you,
Oh,
and you have to address the chair, please.
I just wanted to thank her for her comments, and I wish that when I had been that age, I had had that amount of courage and bravery. But I am here because I, too, believe in changing the name of James Blair Middle School so that every child will feel inspired to rise to their potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berkey.
Our next speaker is Susan Franz.
Good evening. A name does not cause an environment to be equal or unequal, oppressive or not oppressive. A name is just a name. On the other hand, school culture can cause feelings of inequality or oppression. I would like to believe that the culture in our schools is welcoming and non-discriminatory, no matter what the school name is. Board and staff time is better spent determining how to improve the abysmal math and English skills of our students. No matter what race they are, that is what would benefit them more than planting an idea that the name of a school or any building has some power over who they are or what they can achieve. From a financial standpoint, in a division where a point of contention is teacher pay, we don't have the extra funds required to cover all the administrative costs related to a name change. Finally, if you absolutely insist on a name change, I strongly suggest that it not be a personal name. That way, future generations cannot take offense and have to rename schools again. And by the way, I'm arachnophobic, so get rid of the mascot as well. And also, have you seen the Richmond Times-Dispatch? Virginia ranked last in U.S. for math recovery. Time is better spent in getting math recovery and writing recovery than arguing about names. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Franz.
Our next speech.
No applause. There's no applause, and you'll have to leave if that happens again.
All right, good
Our next
evening,
speaker
Madam
is
Chair.
Chris Henderson.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. Chris Henderson, 101 Keystone in James City County. As a point of order for the board, it would be much appreciated by the citizens and those in the audience that you start your meetings on time as the published date and time of the meeting, because you're inconveniencing 100 people in this room. I realize you have important business, but it is not the problem of those in attendance that your agenda was too full for the time that you had allotted. Now, that said, the real question regarding James Blair is, who was James Blair? Well, it just so happens that Park Rouse wrote an autobiography about James Blair. And James Blair was a missionary who came to the United States and he left London. And I want to read you what Park Rouse, who is the former chair of the Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation, an esteemed scholar and historian, he wrote, "This then was James Blair, who forsook the old world and London for the new one of Henrico, Jamestown, and Williamsburg. Born in the age of faith, he lived to know and welcome the dawning of the age of reason. A child of 17th century Scotland, he helped make Virginia something more than an obedient colony. Between the older colonial America and later industrialized America, wrote Parrington, stand the ideals of the Old Dominion, more humane and generous than either, disseminating the principles of French Romantic philosophy and instilling into the provincial American mind, static and stagnant in the grip of English colonialization. The ideal of democratic equalitarianism and the hope for humane progress, the 19th century first entered America by way of the James River. No man contributed more to Virginia's intellectual maturation.
Our next speaker is Elaine Parm.
Thank you.
She will be followed by Naomi Tefera, Bemnet Lagas, and Camille Batts.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Keever, and members of the board. My name is Elaine Parm, and I am a social studies teacher here in WJCC and a member of WJCEA. Speaking as an individual, I would like to thank our division leadership with their continuous communication during our time of network issues, and we're able to resolve it. I would like to mention that as you finalize the budget, that you will continue to support our students and staff and to include reimbursement for additional duty work after contract hours. And lastly, I would encourage the board to support the renaming of James Blair Middle School. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parm.
Our next speaker is Naomi Tefera.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Naomi Tefera. I'm a student at William & Mary, and as a member of the WJCC community and a student of William & Mary recognized PWI, I understand the importance of including diverse histories in the official narratives of a school and questioning the legacies we uphold. I'm here to speak in vocal support of renaming James Blair Middle School after Reverend James R. Tabb. As the county debates the separation of Williamsburg and James City County and its implications for education in our community, ensuring student safety and inclusivity is more important than ever. Reverend Tabb was a pillar of the local community and a symbol of the fight for equitable education, both as the president of the local NAACP chapter at the time of integration and as a father who had to send his daughter to a newly integrated school. A name holds a lot of power, and the name of a school can drive its history, spirit, and legacy. In renaming James Blair Middle School, the school board can advance inclusivity and facilitate the recognition of Reverend Tabb's contributions to the community, a legacy the school board should be proud to celebrate.
Thank you, Ms. Tefera.
Our next speaker is Bemnet Lagas.
Good evening. My name is Bemnet Lagessa. I'm a junior at William & Mary. In my time working with CCL&I have witnessed the arduous and often frustrating path to renaming and how integral it is to healing historic inequalities. Naming a school after James Blair, an enslaver committed to institutionalizing slavery, sets him up as a role model for students, and most egregiously leaves Black students feeling uncomfortable and out of place. Our efforts to end a campus environment that is celebratory of white supremacy and move towards one that is representative of the student body's morals have been met with institutional blocks at every turn. That is why I'm here today, to make sure that this campaign's efforts to create an inclusive environment are not ignored, as ours have been, and to see a future in which no student has to attend a school named after an enslaver.
Thank you, Ms. Lagessa.
Our next speaker is Camille Batts. She will be followed by Molly Robinson, Rio Renfrio, and Jessica Anderson.
Hello, my name is Camille Batts. I'm a junior at William & Mary, and I'm here representing CCLI, which is an undergraduate research committee at William & Mary that stands for the Committee for the Contextualization of Campus Landmarks and Iconography. CCLI researches and contextualizes the buildings, monuments, and statues on our campus. We do so to explore the surface level information of the site when it was built, as well as the deeper meaning, who they're named after and what land they stand on. With that, much of our work aligns with this campaign to rename James Blair Middle School, and we are here tonight to show that we as students and community members support our local community. To consider renaming James Blair is to pave the way for James Blair Middle School students, present, past, and future, to feel welcome. For Black students to attend a school named after a man who perpetuated and institutionalized enslavement, whose ideals were then utilized to resist integration, is completely unacceptable. Names hold immense power, and there are ways to use this power to memorialize figures who represent the values and morals we hope to instill in the community, what we strive for. These figures should be figures that we can look up to. And James Blair, a man who enslaved other people, is not someone we should look up to. I'm glad to be here today, and I'm glad this step is being taken. I hope today a step can be taken in the right direction, and we can start down the road to intentional and impactful naming practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Batts. Our next speaker is Molly Robinson.
Good evening. My name is Molly Robinson. I'm a member of the Village Initiative team, a PhD candidate at William & Mary, and a graduate instructor. I'm also a newly elected vestry member at St. Martin's Episcopal Church. It's this last fact that I'd like to connect with my purpose here tonight, which is to call on the school board to change the name of James Blair Middle School. By now, you're well aware that James Blair founded the College of William & Mary by enslaving people. But Blair was also an ordained Anglican minister and used perversions of the Bible to justify slavery and to turn a profit in the Virginia colony. For Blair, Christianity was a vehicle for economic conquest. In a 1699 proposition, Blair wrote that Black children were, quote, heathen slaves in need of instruction to save their souls. He used baptism to determine levies on Black and Indigenous youth, writing, quote, but whatsoever Indian, Negro, or mulatto child shall not be baptized nor give such public account of his or her faith shall pay levies at the age of 14. His lethal cocktail of religion, economic self-interest, and education of Black and Indian children undermined human dignity. James Blair laid the foundation for segregationist ideology that took hold in the last century when this school was named after him. For us, the path forward is simple. We must change the name of James Blair Middle School. Blair's namesake stands as a shrine to slavery. But now we have a chance to correct this and to show students of color that our public schools are invested in their success and thriving. It's meaningful for me to be able to ask for this change as an Episcopal, as a student, and as an employee of William & Mary. Let's right our wrong, educate our young people about why we're changing the name, and make steps to materially address racial and socioeconomic disparities in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Our next speaker is John Rio Frio.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rio. I live in the city of Williamsburg. I'm here to offer a respectful reminder that the school board is a non-political body whose mission is to vouch for the education and well-being of children in the school district. And I've come this evening to stand up to urge you to continue to do the work of vouching for all children, even those who, through no fault of their own, have been swept up in the politics of the day. I am the father of a transgender child. People hate my daughter simply because she was born with a different understanding of her gender than what most of us have. She doesn't know why that is. We, her parents, don't know why that is. The experts in the medical and psychological community don't know why that is. Our politicians have no idea why that is. What we do know is that dignified, humane, medical, and social treatment do wonders for transgender kids and adults. My daughter was a WJCC student from kindergarten through 12th grade. It wasn't always easy, but her teachers treated her with dignity and respect. Special shout out to Berkeley Middle and Lafayette High School teachers. They called her by her chosen name and used the pronouns that felt right to her. My daughter is now in college. She's a first-year student with a 3.75 GPA. She is thriving. Her gender identity is the least important thing about her. She loves biology and chemistry, but she's also a book nerd who loves Tolkien. She's in a sorority and has discovered that she's a pretty badass rock climber. I'm asking you to tune out the noise and especially the cruelty that wants to label transgender people, but especially children, as broken and dangerous. If you don't know a transgender person, meet one. Ask them, ask us, ask me questions. Take the time to teach yourself what we already know, that transgender people are people, beautiful and flawed, just like the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riofrio.
Our next speaker is Jessica Anderson, followed by Tanya Meredith, Marco Sardi, and Samuel Ray.
Good evening, school board. So I wanted to talk briefly. This morning I was at a celebration of life for Edith Cookie Hurd. I don't know if any of you've heard of her, but she's a fantastic individual who's lived here her whole life and went through the entire process of desegregation and has been an educator to this entire community on that fact. She also led the charge on the name change of Rawlsburg, which is the reason it's now called Laurel Lane. And I say that to say that as we remember her, I would love, in honor of her, to do the same for James Blair. We've already heard countless stories of why the name deserves to be changed, and we can be doing better for WJCC families and the community. I also want to point out that the cost of said change is literally 0.045% of WJCC's total school budget. It's also worth noting that when we talk about our abilities when it comes to math and recovery from the pandemic, there's a shortfall in funding. $3.3 billion in federal funding came to Virginia, which works out to be about $2,500 per student, which puts us $3,700 below the national average. Those other states that are getting more money are having better success. Further evidence of why we need to be funding our schools. I know that is a state issue, but it's also a local issue. And right now, if we look back at the cost of healthcare for a family that works in WJCC. In 2018 and 2019, they went from paying $428 a month for health insurance to now paying $931 in a period of 7 years. They have seen a more than 50% increase, and yet the salaries have come nowhere near that. I know that you're discussing the possibility of 3.5 and 6 and asking for the state, and I know this is a collective effort, but please, please, please fight for the highest number for the educators and staff that work here, because if you want to value our students, you have to value the people that are taking care of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Our next speaker is Tanya Meredith.
Good evening. Thank you to the school board and to the chair. My name is Tanya Meredith. I'm an oral historian at William & Mary, and I'm approaching the school board tonight with information related to the request to change the name of James Blair Middle School. In my research, I found an article written by Earl Greg Swim, for whom William & Mary Swim Libraries is named. The article is called The Lee Free School and the College of William & Mary. Swim writes that the will of William Letwell Lee of Green Spring Plantation set aside 1,000 acres of land in the hot water tract for the education of the children living on that land. 500 bushels of corn from the land was to be paid to the College of William & Mary for the establishment of a free school. However, the college petitioned to be removed as trustees and the land be relinquished to the county. In 1837, the county passed an act vesting 1,000 acres of the hot water tract with the county commissioners, permitting them to sell the land with the proceeds to be applied in execution of said will. The money from the sale and accrued rents were placed into a permanent fund. Records indicate the amount of the fund in 1844 was $712. As of the time of the writing of the article by Earl Greg Swim, 1959, there was no surviving record in James City County or of the city of Williamsburg, of such a fund. The writer suggests to the school board of James City County that when a new school building is erected in the county, that it be named William Letwell Lee in honor of the young man who dreamed of a free school. That never happened. Were William Letwell Lee alive today, he would forego a school being named after him, but would undoubtedly move to have the school named for a person who worked for the betterment of their community, not the detriment, and as he did in freeing his enslaved people and setting aside land for their education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meredith.
Our next speaker is Marco Sardi.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Kiever. My name is Marco Sardi, and I'm the president of WJCEA and also a teacher here at James Blair Middle School. I wish to express once again my support for a budget that meets the needs of our students and our staff. During the last work session, $13.8 million was a figure that some on the board in your discussions did not feel very comfortable about. Other figures of 10 or 11.5 million were thrown into consideration in your discussions, and I feel I am obligated to speak out. We should not budget based on what feels comfortable. We have the facts to support a steady and measured increase in healthcare coverage, staffing needs, especially as they focus on special educators, and a competitive raise from a compensation study that we have begun to bring us in line with recommendations to become a competitively paying division. WJCEA members have voted unanimously in our January meeting to support the compensation study recommendations specifically in regard to education support professionals and our special educators. If my monthly budget was done based on how I felt about my rent, I'm pretty sure I'd be in pretty dire straits. But governing is not always comfortable. It is not always about doing what you want to do. It is about doing what those whom you are charged with presiding over need to the best of your ability. And the best we have currently is a compromise. The current proposal that we have seen last month and the past few weeks is to not fully implement the study because it's not simply fiscally feasible in 1 year. And our staff are doing our best to voice what we need. I was at the Board of Supervisors meeting to speak and ask for their support in whatever your budget is. And the response was that the Board of Supervisors has not, in recent years, ever significantly underfunded our schools. So I encourage you to hold them accountable to those words. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sardi. Our next speaker is Samuel Ray, followed by Donna Mellis, John Slakovich, Amy Cork, and Amy Cork.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the WJCC School Board, educators, parents, and community members. My name is Samuel Ray, and I'm here on behalf of the YJCW NAACP Education Committee to urge you to take a necessary and meaningful step, renaming James Blair Middle School. The name of a school is more than just a title. It represents the values we uphold and the history we choose to honor. James Blair was a colonial leader who played a role in the history of Virginia, but his legacy is deeply tied to a period when Black and Indigenous people were denied basic human rights. In our society, our schools should reflect the names that inspire all students, not ones that remind many of a painful past. Across the country, communities are reevaluating the names of public institutions, recognizing that we must uplift figures who embody the ideals of equality, education, and progress. We have an opportunity here, not to erase history, but to build a future where all students, regardless of background, can walk into a school named after someone who truly represents the best of our shared values. We ask this board to take a stand for inclusivity, for respect, and for a future where every student can feel valued. A name is not just symbolic. It is a statement about who we are and what we believe in. We urge you to vote in favor of this change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Our next speaker is Donna Mellis.
Thank you. Is that good? Mm-hmm. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. It's been a long time since I've spoken up about anything because my children are grown and I'm old. History is very important. All history is important. If we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. So I'm not discounting anything about the history of all of this because it is important. My grandmother came over to this country as an indentured servant, which is a slave. I've been a taxpayer of James City County and resident for over 30 years. What I can't understand with the scores that the schools have now in teaching, how poorly the students are doing, that my tax dollars and other people's, but I haven't heard of many taxpayers speaking this evening. I think it's important for taxpayers to be here to speak about this, to spend the money, and it isn't cheap to change the name of anything. I think the money would be wiser to be used for the children and to help the children. People are selectively deciding what's better for everybody. Name the school Field of Lilies. But changing the name is expensive, and at this time, these school children need the money for more important things.
Thank you, Ms. Mellis. Our next speaker is John Slakovitz. Okay. Amy Cork is our next speaker, followed by Jackie Williams, Richard Timberlake, Amaya Jones, and John Mills, or Don Mills.
Good evening, Superintendent and members of the school board. My name is Amy Quirk. I'm a city resident. I have 2 children in the WJCC schools and am a member of the Village Initiative. I came here tonight after asking my 9-year-old whether or not he thought James Blair Middle School's name should be changed. And his answer was yes, he thought so. And so I asked him, well, what are your reasons? He thought about it for a bit, and he said, well, I guess my black friends, my classmates at school, probably wouldn't feel very good if they were going to a school that was named after an enslaver. And I said, that's a good reason to change the name, to take care of your friends, to take care of your community. And I asked him, well, what about you? Does it affect you, the name of the school? And he said, again, thought about it for a bit, and he said, well, I think that a school name is something that you should feel proud of. You want to feel proud of a school that you go to. And he says, I guess it would be pretty hard for any of us to feel proud if our school was named after an enslaver. So I asked him one more question. I said, well, some people would say that you don't really have an opinion that matters on this because you don't go to James Blair. You're going to go to Berkeley when you go to middle school. So maybe your opinion won't matter. And he said, but we're all part of WJCC, so it should be a name that we're all proud of. So I ask you, members of the school board, to make a decision tonight that we can all be proud of and change the name of James Blair Middle. And in the coming months, I think that there's going to be many more difficult decisions. There's going to be other, and there already are other groups in our school, students that are being threatened, our LGBTQ students, our immigrant students. And I urge you, as we go forward, to take my son's advice. Make decisions that everyone in our community can feel proud of. Make decisions that take care of everyone in our community, because we're all
Thank you, Ms. Quirk.
WJCC.
Our next speaker is Jackie Williams.
The opportunity to be here this evening. I'm Jackie Williams. I am a resident and taxpayer in James City County. I am going to read to you this evening A Slave Narrative by Frederick Douglass. And the reason I'm reading this is to speak to the generations of trauma, pain, cruelty, depravity, and of slavery. I never saw my mother to know her as such more than 4 or 5 times in my life, and each of these times was very short in duration. She was hired by Mr. Stewart, who lived about 12 miles from my home. She made her journeys to see me in the night, traveling the whole distance on foot after the performance of her day's work in the field, and as a field hand, and a whipping would be given if she had been caught. I do not recollect seeing my mother by the light of day. She was with me at night. She would lie down with me and get me to sleep. But long before I was awake and she was gone, there was no communication really between us. I was not allowed to be present during her passing. I was about 7 years old. I'm putting this together because I don't want to run out of time. The premise of this is that he never had the chance to enjoy his mother's touch, her tender care, and slavery took that away from him. He could not live with his mother. His mother was enslaved. She would have been beaten if they had known that she was visiting her son. So to celebrate the name of James Blair and leave the name of James Blair on the school does continue the pain and trauma that we as descendants of slaves continue to experience. Slavery was a gut punch to us and a pain in our souls. And I ask that this same community that changed the name of Rawls Bird to Laurel Lane would consider the students and the families of today and for the future. We know it's about equity, and equity means that everybody gets what they deserve. And the equitable thing to do would be to change the name.
Is Richard Timberlake.
My name is Richard Timberlake. I live in Williamsburg. I've lived off and on in the Williamsburg, James City County area since 1957. I graduated from James Blair High School in 1973. I attended Thomas Nelson Community College. I'm glad to be a resident of this area. I've only got 2 minutes tonight, so I'm only going to bring up two things: history and money. That's what concerns the school board, as it should. History. Members of the school board, you do not go to see history in a museum. You do not hide it away for somebody to go seek it out and find it. History should be all around us. We should learn all we can about what makes us special and unique. I've heard a lot tonight about history, about James Blair's legacy. What's his legacy? William and Mary. What's his legacy? Religion. This is what this man stood for. The history is that James Blair, an Anglican minister, came here, immigrated here he came from London, immigrated from Scotland, 1685. He came here because the church was happy to get rid of him. He was a troublemaker, he was combative, he didn't want to put up with the old way, he wanted the new way of doing things. He wanted to see the new world. When he got to Jamestown, the capital, he worked to bring about the movement of the capital from Jamestown to Middle Plantation, which became Williamsburg. He started the effort and co-founded William and Mary. He moved to professionalize the faculty and to move away from the traditional English way of teaching. He wanted to do it the colonist way. He wanted to do it the new way, not that old school thing. He stood for what was right. He stood for religion, and his legacy is something that should not be abided just because of the fact that he came up in a time in which you built things. Well, you couldn't go to the John Deere dealership on Route 60. You couldn't go to Sheldon Lumber and get what you needed. The way that you built things in those days was done that way. You can't hold that against the man, his legacy, his history. The other thing is money. Second thing you need to know.
Thank you, Mr. Timberlake. Our next
$120,000.
speaker is Amaya Jones.
Hello, I'm Amaya, a student at William and Mary and a member of the Village Initiative. I'll be reading an excerpt of the narrative of an enslaved person, Mr. Brown. The departure of Mr. Brown's family marked the most excruciating days of his life. His wife and young children were caged overnight in a local jail before being auctioned off and marched out of town in ropes and chains. He could do nothing but stand by, watch and listen to their agonizing cries. He chronicled these last moments in his narrative. I looked for the approach of another gang in which my wife was also loaded with chains. My eyes soon caught her precious face, but gracious heavens, that glance of agony, my God, spare me from ever again enduring. I seized hold of her hand while my mind felt unutterable things. I went with her for about 4 miles hand in hand, but both our hearts were so overpowered with feeling that we could say nothing, and when at last we were obliged to part, the look of mutual love which we exchanged was all the token which we could give each other, and that we should yet again meet in heaven. After the devastating loss of his family, Brown entertained suicide, except the experience inspired his remarkable escape. Desperate to flee bondage and tell the world about the sufferings of his fellow slaves, he risked bodily injury and death by mailing himself in freedom to the North. I encourage the school board to consider renaming James Blair to not represent this horrible legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And our final speaker is Mr. Mills.
I'm just going to keep my comments pretty simple. I just want to kind of ask anybody who would answer. I mean, what is the first thing you remember when you think of Aristotle, when you think of Julius Caesar, or the pharaohs of Egypt, or Mansa Musa in Africa? You don't think slaver. You don't think that they all owned slaves. you think of the great things that they did, because that's how history remembers people who advance civilization, who advance our culture. It's actually a weird fact because when you think about the Western man is actually the one who abolished slavery first in the world. So it's actually the culture that we brought to this world is actually the culture that abolished slavery, which is actually still open slave markets in Africa right now in Libya. But we're here for James Blair. James Blair, look him up on the internet. I know probably nobody knew who James Blair was before this. The kids sure don't, because you're saying they're not proud of him. It's a lot to be proud of. Anglican minister, notoriously combative member of the Governor's Council in the 1600s and 1700s for decades, who worked successfully to have 3 governors removed. I mean, that's pretty cool. Speaking truth to power, getting people removed, being active. And then he also founded the College of William and Mary, which is a great addition to this community. We love it. We love all the history. So what people had flaws for all of human history. You know, it's not, who's next? Jefferson? I mean, he owned slaves. Washington? Are we going to remove them all? These guys actually had something to do with the culture that created the most amazing country in this world. And Williamsburg is so unique in that place. And I hope we can hold that dear because, you know, we have a lot to show the world and we need to stop being ashamed of our history. It sucks. It's messy. Some of it sucks. Actually, most of it's really great. But, you know, we learn and we move forward and we become closer together. And I love all of my American brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
That concludes our speakers.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Donner, and thank you to everyone who came out to speak tonight. We appreciate hearing perspective from our community members. We will now move on to our consent agenda. Which, compared to recent months, it's actually a little on the short side. Item 7.01, approval of financial report and monthly bills and payroll, January 2025. Item 7.02, approval of minutes from the budget work sessions on January 21st, 25. Approval of minutes from the meeting on January 21st, 2025. And approval of the minutes from our special call meeting on January 30th of 2025. Approval of minutes from the meeting on February 4th, 2025. Approval of the resolution R525 National School Social Work Week. Item 7.07, approval of resolution R625 World Languages Week. Item 7.08, approval of resolution R725 Disability Awareness Month. And approval of resolution R825 Equity in Education Month. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donner.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
No.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. All right, item 8.01, approval of personnel actions. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve personnel actions as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hosang.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. Item 8.02, approval of purchase request for Clara Bird Baker Elementary School HVAC upgrade. May I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the purchase request for Clara Bird Baker Elementary School HVAC dehumidification upgrade project to Colonial Web under annual contract number 19-13739 for a total amount of $1,051,257.
Thank you, Mr. Hosang. Is there a second?
Second the motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. Item 8.03, approval of request for a permanent easement at Clara Bird Baker Elementary School, real property to James City County. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the request for a permanent easement at Claire Bird Baker Elementary School, real property, to James City County as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley. Is there a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. And item 8.04, approval of the process to consider the potential renaming of James Blair Middle School. Just to clarify, we are voting on whether to establish a committee that would further look into and gather input from the community, specifically from James Blair Middle School, but also from the broader community. So this is not a vote to rename the school per se. This is a vote on whether or not to solicit more input from the community, specifically the community that would be most effective. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the proposed process, committee, composition, role, and timeline to consider renaming James Blair Middle School as presented.
Madam
Is there
Chair,
a
I
second?
second the motion. I'd like to speak to the motion if possible.
Yes, and yeah. You second it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we'll take discussion.
Yeah, I think it's, I just want to ask the board's perception of when we create this committee, how many of us are on it. I feel as it's kind of a weaker committee with just one board member. I feel like it needs to have multiple board members. And there's suggestions from Dr. Kiever of why we kept it this way, but this is more of an open public committee from my understanding than the typical, like the other ones we're a part of.
Specific to your question about number of board members, if that number is increased, you are.
I understand.
Okay, then you're looking to add some level of complexity in terms of open meeting laws. Not that the committee conversations wouldn't be open, but there will need to be agendas published, et cetera.
Well, if 2 members are present, it's just a normal committee. It's just 2 members. So.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's currently just listed as one.
Right.
Just listed as one right now. That's right.
I guess the discussion between the board would be like, do we want to involve multiple perspectives of our board on that committee? That's what I'm asking, because I think one person could just kind of say how it is and that kind of thing. I just want to give it more of a shot here with more involvement if we could.
I'm not opposed to adding a second board member. I don't know that the vote will hinge on whether we have 1 or 2, but I think that's something that we can discuss afterwards. The constellation of the committee would be determined after.
Technically, we're doing this is a proposal for exactly what that is, so I wouldn't be comfortable amending our motion after we've created it. Like, this is a Robert's Rules kind of procedural thing here, so. Because we're publicly announcing one member, and if we vote on it.
You can either vote it down and
We can amend the motion. You can amend what it says, the topic. That's what I'm suggesting.
Sure.
The committee composition. So, my apologies for not following the board.
Then along those lines, I would, if we're amending the composition of the committee, I would recommend that, as several or some of the speakers mentioned tonight, that we are Williamsburg, James City County. Right now, this proposal for the committee only has James Blair, James Blair students, faculty, parents listed for the committee. It's just not a fund that James Blair has. This is the fund from Williamsburg, James City County, if we're going to be paying for a school name change. So I would recommend that we have individuals from across Williamsburg, James City County on the committee.
Sure. That's actually what I was suggesting, because we can have a JCC member and a city member on the committee. That would satisfy that notion if Mr. Hosang is amendable to it.
Well, I don't know if you're both suggesting the same thing. I think Mr. Hosang is suggesting opening up to a broader public. You were mentioning school board members, perhaps.
Well, my suggestion was in an underlying condition of, like, who we appoint to this is discussed by us, but having 2 members, we could have 1 JCC, 1 city member, and we can move from there. But
Would that satisfy what you were saying, Mr. Hosang?
Well, I agree with Mr. Riffle regarding having 2 school board members, but I would also recommend or move to amend to have individuals from outside of James Blair being part of the committee.
So the rationale was obviously community members from all over Williamsburg and James City County can continue voicing their opinion as they have been through email, letters, public comment. The idea of the committee was to help the school board ascertain the real impact on the James Blair community itself, the school itself, that would be undergoing a name change, and how that would impact staff, students, families. So that was a specific set of information that we were trying to ascertain. There's no one prohibiting any other community members from voicing their opinion on this. And the committee is simply bringing a recommendation. The committee is not making a decision. Although I'm not inherently opposed to recomposing the committee, but that might have been something to suggest before tonight.
I understand that, Madam Chair. I'm trying to actually work on a compromise here with Mike. That's what I'm suggesting. We can kind of share this continual, like, I think we need the James City County representation and the City of Williamsburg, but I've actually leaned on Dr. Keever's explanation of what we should do from this point.
That's a delicate question, Mr. Riffle. I think that, to Ms. Ortego's point, the initial composition was designed very specifically around the current attendance zone for this middle school. And that attendance zone could be students who are in elementary school moving their way towards here, or potentially have left here but still reside within the stated attendance boundaries. The focus was on this particular part of the community, meaning the James Blair zone. I don't think administratively we would be opposed to having 2 members of the school board serve on that committee. I do just want to mention that the larger the committee structure becomes, the more challenging that committee structure is in order to bring back recommendations to the board on the timeline that we've suggested. So if there is a desire for a more widespread community participation effort via the committee, I'm not sure administratively we'll be able to position this board to make a decision prior to the start of the 25-26 school year.
So there's a...
Can I make a suggestion, or just for all of us to consider? My understanding, well, I am a James Blair Middle School parent and family. I reside in the city, but we have a lot of James Blair Middle School families that reside outside of the city. Many of my daughter's friends live outside of the city of Williamsburg, so I would imagine that when I was reviewing this committee composition, I sort of thought we would be considering interest from the entire James Blair Middle School sort of attendance zone, as Dr. Keever recommended and as was discussed and presented to us at our last working session. Maybe I assumed incorrectly, but I assumed that that would include a representative of the county as well as the city, and we would make that open to, that's sort of the beauty of this school. I think it's representative of earlier some comments at WJCC. We're not just city and county, we're combined here.
Mrs. Donner, did you want to add something?
Sure, and just for the viewing public, because you might not have it pulled up, but the committee composition, the suggestion is 2 to 3 current James Blair Middle School students, 2 to 3 current James Blair Middle School staff, 2 to 3 James Blair Middle School parents and guardians, 1 school board member, 2 to 3 residents of the James Blair Middle School attendance zone, 1 James Blair administrator, and the assistant superintendents for school leadership and secondary. And so by my math, with having 2 to 3 parents plus then 2 to 3 members of the attendance zone, that's between 4 and 6 members of the community who would then be available to be on that committee. And so I think that should cover having both people from the city and the county represented, and that you do have folks that are from both. You do have that swath of folks that are covering.
Well, I'm not just saying from the county that where James Blair students come from. I'm saying from the entire county. I mean, don't limit it to just individuals whose students go to James Blair. I mean, open it up to anyone that would like to serve. And I mean, again, we're going to have to limit it somehow, but by limiting it just to individuals who have students going to James Blair, I think, I don't think is, if you want to say, it's fair to other members of the county.
May I ask? Well, because I think if you're going to open that up, because I think we're talking about from the county, but that's also the city. And so if you were, I don't think there's, if you were to open it up to, let's say, 2 at-large members, there's no guarantee that those are city people or county people, because, right, that you would have to open it up to everybody, because it's not just a county decision, it's also a city resident decision as well.
That's why I suggest my I think kind of covers both things, and it kind of goes back to what Madam Chair said earlier, of like, this is a public body still. It will work as every other committee. Like, people can show up to the SEAC committee or the student advisory committee. Like, these are things that are open to the public. So I'm suggesting the board thing perspectives to kind of alleviate kind of the concern of both those things, and we'll welcome people and we can talk about it more.
The idea of the committee is that they would be doing legwork to ascertain information, to survey, to poll, to get information from other people. It's not a group of 6 or 8 people who are going to take a vote, and then that's it. Exactly. So,
well, they will recommend to us, right?
They will bring a recommendation to change or not to change. But I'm saying they are getting, the whole point of the committee is to get more input from more people. Are you suggesting 2 to 3 people who are not affiliated with James Blair?
That's fine. Just to give those individuals a say in the how, if we go forward with changing the name, how we're spending our money.
So does someone want to offer an amendment to the motion? Or,
I'll be clear, I won't be seconding a motion that's outside of my own, so I'm going to leave it at that, and then, which is mine. Mine's the school board member change, which is what I'm suggesting.
I will remind the board that this was presented 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
In this capacity, and there's a lot of time.
I'm happy with the motion as it is, but I'm suggesting an additional conversation. That's what I did. So, right. I mean, which the motion is, I could move the pending question right now, and then we could vote on this, and it'll go erase everything we just said. I'm just leaving it for discussion, and it will be what this is, as written. That's why I suggested a conversation, but which had to be done publicly. I mean, we were talking about it on a vote today, so.
All right. So what I'm hearing is that the potential amendments to the composition of the committee would be an additional board member and possibly 2 to 3 members of the community who are not affiliated with the James Blair attendance zone. Would that be a combination of what you two would want to amend?
Oh. I just want school board members, so I'll be voting no on that amendment. I'm just going to move the pending question if I don't get what I want at this point, so that's why I made it a motion. So.
I think they're 2 separate amendments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can say no to not seconding the motion.
Okay.
That's fine.
You're not opposed to an additional school board member, right?
I am not.
Okay. Why don't you make a motion to amend it the way you'd like it amended?
Okay. Madam Chair, I move to approve the proposed committee composition, role, and timeline to consider the renaming of James Blair Middle School as, with addition of adding an additional board member to the committee's composition.
This is a motion for an amendment.
This is a motion to I guess,
amend the motion.
This is 8.041, if I'm going to make a new thing for the clerk here.
Okay. Is there a second on the amendment of Mr. Riffle's motion?
I will second.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. We are now going to take a vote on whether to add an additional school member to the composition. This is not a vote on establishing the committee. Ms. Aller.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. Okay, so currently the proposed committee composition is as presented plus an additional school board member. Mr. Hosang, would you like to also add an amendment to the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to amend the motion to add 2 to 3 non-James Blair related residents to the committee.
Okay, and who would apply through the same way as everyone else that applies?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there a second to Mr. Hosang's motion? I'll second it.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
No.
Mr. Riffle.
No.
Ms. Chen.
No.
Mrs. Donner.
No.
Mrs. Ortego.
So that amendment failed. So now we will vote on the motion on the table, which has been amended to include 2 school board members. This is whether or not to establish a committee. The motions have been made and seconded, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Ms. Chen.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
No.
Mrs. Ortego.
We will move on to item 9.01, presentation of fiscal year 2026 superintendent's proposed operating budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the board and the WJCC schools community. Tonight, we are pleased to present the fiscal year 26 superintendent's proposed budget. Our presentation this evening takes into consideration the feedback we have received from the employee input process, the recently completed compensation study, countless interactions with staff groups over the last several months, and our fervent commitment to the belief statements and priorities identified in the recently approved Elevate 28 strategic plan. This proposal reflects ongoing dialogue with the school board over the past several meetings, as well as months of internal work to consider and refine each area to present a true budget of need. Every dollar requested is essential to maintaining the high-quality education our students deserve and pushing our achievements to the next level. As we have previously shared, WJCC student achievement grew in the 23-24 school year, with all schools earning accreditation, and the class of 2024 recording an on-time graduation rate of over 95%. Administration is conscious of the need to balance responsible fiscal and financial management with targeted investments that drive academic achievement and student growth. We are committed to providing a stellar educational system for our students, families, and staff. As shared last month, an additional $7.7 million investment has been withheld from this proposed budget to consider in future years, as we fully appreciate the challenges our funding partners face in supporting the needs of our entire community. While our student enrollment has remained steady at approximately 11,300 students, the needs of our students have grown and changed significantly. For example, nearly 35% of our students qualify as economically disadvantaged. More than 3% of our students and their families qualify for support within the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. From 2021-22 school year to this school year, our special education population has grown by over 9%, and our English language learner population has grown by more than 40%. Over that same time frame, our instructional staff has grown by less than 2 percentage points. Moreover, 45% of our behavioral referrals at the elementary level are for students in kindergarten and first grade, and this has led to repeated requests and legitimate need for additional supports in our schools. While the FY26 proposed budget does contain some new FTEs designed to ensure the necessary support in the school division, a significant portion of the investment is dedicated to retaining our staff. As veteran educators exit our system, we lose their institutional knowledge and, more importantly, the relationships they have forged with their colleagues, our families, and most importantly, those whom they directly serve, our students. An investment in our teachers and staff is an investment in our students. As such, you will see a 3% salary increase for all staff, targeted investments in the teacher pay scale and support scales as outlined in the compensation study, and division coverage for a portion of the anticipated increase in the cost of health care, some modest contract changes, and stipend enhancements. Our year-over-year increase in the request for funding from our funding partners is approximately $13.9 million, excuse me. As in previous years, we're challenged in presenting this proposal to you without a full and complete picture from Richmond on state support. Though we are hopeful for more dollars from the state, our need to serve the students of this community is independent from the level of support we receive from other sources. As a public school system, we have the genuine joy and responsibility to serve all of our students. We believe in providing broad-based and high-quality opportunities that enable every student to reach their greatest academic potential. Our belief statement as an organization can only be fulfilled with a fiscal investment to match. Madam Chair, members of the board, our counterparts at the city and the county have challenged us recently to present a budget of need that will advance the achievement of every student in Williamsburg and James City County. Our schools are the foundation of this community. This budget reflects our shared commitment to champion the success of every student. I asked Ms. Ewing, our Chief Financial Officer, to present the superintendent's budget. If possible, I would ask the board to hold questions until the end of the presentation so that we may lay out the plan in its entirety. Ms. Ewing?
Ms. Ewing, may I just read my disclosure statement just to get used to doing this every meeting? I should have it memorized, but I don't. As a member of the school board of Williamsburg, James City County, I acknowledge that I may have an interest in the fiscal year 25 school budget because my husband is an employee of the WJCC schools. However, I believe that I am able to participate in the consideration of and vote on the budget fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Keever. It is my pleasure to present to you this evening the superintendent's proposed fiscal year 26 operating budget. As you know, considerable work has gone into developing the superintendent's proposed budget. This fiscal year 26 plan is a balance of meeting established school board priorities related to the strategic plan, Elevate 28, a review of available revenue, and meeting the division needs for the upcoming fiscal year. Enrollment is based on our September 30th student count each year. This chart shows a historical look at our enrollment from fiscal year 2017 until now. We saw a decline in enrollment in fiscal year 21 to 10,858 due to the pandemic and have almost reached the pre-pandemic enrollment level with current enrollment at 11,379. Each year, Future Think prepares 10-year enrollment projections based on our September 30th enrollment information. These projections include a low, moderate, most likely, and high projection. Next year's projection ranges from a low of 11,345 to a high of 11,833. For many years, we used the low projection to develop our operating budget, but we have developed the budget again based on our current year enrollment as of September 30th, as we believe this is the most conservative approach to budget based on the students that we currently have. As a reminder, these enrollment numbers do not include our preschool students, which total 395 each year. In addition to enrollment data, we use the strategic plan to guide the development of the budget and to ensure the budget supports the needs and goals of the school division. As we go through the presentation and review expenditure increases, those that are considered mandatory, which is a statutory or contractually obligated expenditure, are notated with an asterisk. All other expenditures are deemed essential in order to continue to deliver high-quality instruction and to sustain division operations. Currently, our state revenue is based on Governor Youngkin's proposed amendments to the 24-26 state budget and is estimated to go up by approximately $2.4 million. We remain hopeful that through General Assembly action that our state revenue will increase and provide additional funding for K-12 education. Here you will see the proposed expenditures related to the key priority of academic achievement, college and career readiness, and educational equity as shared at our earlier budget work sessions, which includes mandatory FTEs for LEAP teachers and special education staff, as well as essential FTEs for classroom teachers and counselors based on our staffing ratios. Additional positions related to the key priority include elementary teacher assistants for behavior support, as well as 2 elementary gifted resource teachers to expand the K-2 program. Other proposed expenditures in this area include funds for our commitment to the New Horizons program, increases in special education private day tuition, as well as funding to support AP exam fees. I would like to point out that the amount for New Horizons is $81,000 more than we were anticipating and represents an 18.4% increase. This is due to increased CTE participation as well as some changes within the special education program that increased our cost allocation. Total expenditure increases related to the key priority amount to $4.9 million. The safety and security of students and staff remain a priority, and expenditure increases here amount to approximately $457,000. We will be in our final year of eligibility for the Elementary Security Officer Grant, so the budget proposal includes moving these positions into the operating fund. We may know by final budget adoption in May if we will receive funding for these positions. However, this grant does have a matching requirement, so even if we receive the grant again for all 9 positions, a minimum of $250,000 will be required in the operating fund to support the match requirement. In order to attract and retain high-quality employees and remain competitive with neighboring divisions, the budget proposal includes a 3% salary increase for employees, which is mandatory in order to receive our full revenue allocation from the state. The budget proposal also includes targeted teacher scale adjustments for the steps the compensation study identified as under market, as well as smoothing the transition between steps to ensure that we have at least a 0.5% between each step. For the unified pay scale, our minimum pay will increase from $14.50 per hour to $15.50, and all employees will be brought up to the minimum of Bolton's recommended pay scale. Additional implementation of the pay study will focus on increased compensation for current grades 5 through 16. These adjustments represent the first year of a 3-year plan to implement the recommendations from the Bolton study. The budget proposal includes funds to maintain the $3 pay increase for bus drivers approved by the board in January, as well as funds to support contractual day and stipend adjustments, and funding to pay new teachers for training prior to the start of their contract with WJCC. The budget proposal includes an increase for health care based on an estimated increase of 15% and sharing that 70% WJCC and 30% employees. Overall, the investment under supporting priority human capital and positive culture amounts to $10.2 million, which is essential to attract new staff as well as retain the dedicated staff that we already have here in WJCC. Budget expenditures related to organizational efficiency and effectiveness include positions within finance, human resources, and operations in order to provide support across the division to all of our employees. Other expenditures related to organizational efficiency include funding to support anticipated increases in our workers' compensation and general liability insurances, as well as other contractual commitments that we have. Total expenditures related to organizational efficiency and effectiveness amount to $1.5 million. Also related to supporting priority organizational efficiency and effectiveness, we have estimated savings of $720,000 as represented on this slide in order to offset some of the expenditure increases. When you compare the estimated increase in state revenue of approximately $2.4 million to our expenditure adjustments of $16.3 million, the difference is $13.9 million, which becomes our request to our funding partners. This amount represents a 12.9% increase above our current fiscal year 25 appropriations from the localities. We remain hopeful that there will be additional state funding as the General Assembly finalizes their budget, which would reduce the request to our funding partners. There were additional budget requests submitted during this year's process, but not included in the budget proposal. These included additional FTEs, stipend requests, and contractual day changes for various positions, as well as years 2 and 3 of the Bolton compensation study. In total, about $7.7 million in requests were identified as needs, but not included in the budget proposal. This graphic shows the breakdown of revenue received by funding source. In WJCC schools, the majority of our funding, 61.7%, is reliant on the support of the City of Williamsburg and James City County. Here you will see all funds for our current budget as well as the fiscal year 26 budget proposal. The total of all funds, including operating, grants, state-operated programs, and child nutrition services funds, amounts to a total of just under $214 million. Overall, there is a $16.3 million increase year to year for the operating fund, of which the majority, $13.9 million, will become a request for additional funding from the localities. The decrease in the grants fund is related to the ESSER grants expiring during fiscal year 2025. Our next steps in the budget development and approval process include a public hearing on Dr. Keever's budget proposal on March 4th. A joint meeting with our funding partners from the city and county is scheduled for March 14th, with board discussion and approval of the budget on March 18th in order to deliver to the city and county by April 1st the school board approved budget. And this concludes our formal presentation of the superintendent's proposed fiscal year 26 budget proposal. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Ewing. Questions from board members? These are numbers I think we're largely familiar with, and I think normally this would be the meeting where we get our spiral-bound budget book, and we know that that is due to the network outage last week that we don't have it. It's not anyone's fault. So we can't pour through the pages now, but we will probably get those soon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we will, at our next meeting, maybe be able to have some more targeted questions. But right now, based on this presentation, are there any comments or questions? Follow up to our last budget work session? Yeah.
I just want to thank you for putting in the $7.7 million, which is what we didn't ask for. I think that's been a question from both the city and the county, and so I think it's helpful for the viewing public as well as our funding partners to see that when we do come in, I mean, we are coming in with what is kind of our baseline needs, and that there are other things that we know that could support that we just, unfortunately have to say no at the time. So thank you for putting that in and heeding that request.
Any other thoughts or comments? I know we've had some discussions as board members about the, we have the chart where with expenditure increases broken out into categories, mandatory compensation, study related, other FTE positions, and then some other kind of miscellaneous additions. And I've had conversations with all of you about your thoughts on these columns. I don't know if anyone wants to comment.
Yeah, I wanted to address the behavioral specialists in each elementary school, and I feel that is definitely important. But I also know that a lot of the elementary schools have done things like Matoka has talked about with reset rooms. I know there's one also at Norge. And so asking for 9, I mean, I would be amenable to the schools that most need it, and maybe a couple of maybe a school share. So I think that that could be cut in half, instead of 9, 4, or 5 at the most. But I do believe they're important, but I don't believe every school is having the same difficulties on the same levels. So that's one thing. And then, of course, my top priority is teacher compensation. So those are my two biggies.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley. I wanted to follow up on a question that I think a number of us had last time that we've since gotten the answer for in terms of additional FTEs. That it looked initially like we were asking for 48.85 completely brand new positions, and then in the last meeting it sounded like, oh no, a lot of those were filled, but then we got a breakdown on how many are already filled or I guess grant funded that would have to roll in and how many would be completely new. And it does look like there's a sizable number that would be brand new, meaning we don't currently have a person in that position.
That's right.
And I think a concern I have, I think some other board members have, is not necessarily the merit of the request. It's more a hesitation to pad the budget with $3.1 million of FTEs that we potentially wouldn't ever find the people for. I mean, and I know that's a little bit of a catch-22. You can't hire them and then get the positions approved. We have to get positions approved and then try to fill them. But I think that's in my talks with board members, I think that's a point of concern. Not that we don't think we need the positions, and if people were lining up ready to take them, that might be a different story. But can you speak to whether we anticipate easily filling these or not easily filling these? Because what happens then if we don't fill them, we've asked our localities for however many millions of dollars it would take to get them, and then we don't fill them, and then sometimes that money gets diverted at the end of the year, and we perhaps would have been better off not asking for that. So
I want to start by reminding the board and the public that to begin the 24-25 school year for instructional staff positions, we were over 99% staffed. Mm-hmm. And we had added some additional teaching staff to the budget last year. I feel like we will continue to work diligently to be as close to 100% on instructional staff. And I believe that if these positions make it through the budgeting process, we will do everything possible to staff those positions instructionally. On the support side, we were 92-93% staffed to start the school year, and frankly, a majority of those positions were at grade 5. Grade 5 is custodians, child nutrition services, and then bus drivers were grade 8. So our largest staffing gaps are in those 3 position areas that I just described. We will continue to be challenged to staff those positions at 100%, but I feel like the other positions that we have listed in the budget and are requesting are positions that we will be able to fill.
And how many of these from this list that you gave us in our SBQ would fall into the category that you just described as difficult to staff?
I don't see any on that list. Okay. We are not asking for additional custodians. We're not asking for additional bus drivers or child nutrition workforce. We initially, in some of the savings information that Ms. Ewing presented, we have reduced the number of FTEs for bus drivers as a cost savings measure. There is potential, I think, there to look again at that data point because we have struggled to get that number. Mm-hmm. There's a possibility that we can come back as we get further into the budget discussion process in terms of the number of FTEs allocated for bus drivers. But I also think that the work that the board is attempting to do relative to the compensation study and really prioritizing grades 5 through 16 on the support scale, which will become the unified scale, will have a net positive impact on our staffing abilities. Ms. Ewing mentioned that grade 5 will go from $14.50 an hour to $15.50 an hour. That's a significant increase and one that we think will help us. If you'll remember when the board approved the $3 an hour for bus drivers, we've seen additional traffic when it comes to people desiring those positions. So part of it is compensation. The other part of it is what happens once we hire them and support them and create a culture around them that helps them want to be with us every day.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the board right now? Is there any guidance that you are looking for from the board at this juncture tonight, specifically?
I don't think so. I think we've heard over the course of the discussion that we wanted to present a budget of need, and we have done that. And as we have an opportunity to dialogue with the board in the work session on March 4th, we are hopeful to have some additional information around healthcare. We know that that's a large piece of this puzzle, and I think it's important to know what our healthcare scenario is related to salary increase.
Yes.
So we want to be able to bring that back, and I think we also recognize that if the state comes through with additional funding, that will help lighten the request that we make. So hopefully we'll have some more information to be able to share on March 4th.
And in response to that about the healthcare piece, that's the big wild card. That's a really, really big number. It's always a big number, but it increased significantly, at least how we have it in our budget now. And I did want to speak to something I heard tonight, and we received an email about the level of discomfort that the board had last time with the number and picking the number to build the budget with was precisely because we felt we had large numbers that were unknown to us. We didn't know what the General Assembly was going to do. We didn't know what the governor was going to do. We didn't know what healthcare numbers we were really working with. And the difference between 15% and 9% is huge. And so we were talking about how to instruct Ms. Ewing to build her budget, and there was discomfort with the large numbers that were yet unknown at the time. And so that is my interpretation of the discomfort. But yeah, we did ask her to go ahead and show the budget of need, and as we saw tonight, that does not even include a 7.7 million or so additional increase. I just want to also clarify, so for years 2 and 3 of the compensation study, I think it was at 5.5. I'm not finding it quickly enough.
That number may actually be a little bit higher than that because I don't believe Bolton years 2 and 3. Renee, correct me if I'm wrong, but did we add in the benefits to that number?
I don't think we have.
Yeah, I think that additional
5.15.
I think would actually be higher if we came back to you with a firm number, because I don't believe that includes all of the benefits that come along with that.
Okay, because I was going to ask if that number would be pretty firm next year when we come around. Like, is that a number we can kind of hang our hat on to finish it? But no.
We'll get you an updated number.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Oh, Mr. Riffle.
Yeah. I'd like to speak to the AP exams fees. I'm a little concerned, and a couple other the positions for central office or the efficiency. I'm amendable to those type of positions and things. I think AP exams, as somebody who's recently taken them, I think they are hard, and I don't know if paying for all of them is maybe worth a $340,000 investment in this initial year. I'd be open to hear more, and this is kind of what I wish the public comments would be more about. Like, we're talking about $14 million budget here, and we're getting very little feedback on this kind of thing, which is like, we want you to be efficient with this money. It's like, we are, but I really want to hear from the perspective of AP students. I want to hear from AP teachers, like why this stuff's important to keep in the budget, because when we get our funding partners to give us our check and we say spend it with Ms. Ewing and Dr. Kiever, it kind of shakes out in different ways, and we have to kind of pick, and so I'm on the fence a little bit about some of the stuff we have here, and then those categories. I want to keep the mandatory stuff in our budget. I clearly want to start moving towards the Bolton study and compensation, but I'm amendable to the right side of the buckets to still be up for discussion. I think the FTEs are still of a concern that I share with Mr. Hosang and other board members. It's not I don't believe in this budget. I firmly want as much as we can get. And I think the state will do its part with the support cap and that type of stuff, and I can speak to that later in my comments if it's not necessary now. But I'm leaning into what we have here. I think it's Ms. Ewing, I appreciate what you've done, and so I say thank you for the time. And I know it's been a little uncertain in what we have here, but that's kind of where I'm feeling still. I'm open to, but I'm pleading to our local partners to give us what you're asking for here, and I understand that we have to make some difficult choices as we move through this process still too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Mrs. Henley, did you want
I wanted to piggyback also on something Madam Chair said about being uncomfortable. I think I may have used that word when I had stated also I felt uncomfortable making a decision for the people that are in the trenches because I hadn't at that point heard from teachers or staff what they thought of our budget. So I may have used that word as well, but I still would like to hear from staff and teachers what they have seen, what's going to impact them the most. I know that the compensation will be one thing, but the other things that we are discussing, it would be nice to hear their feedback as well. So I'm just speaking right now to the general public, the staff, the teachers. That's where I was uncomfortable making saying this when they're the ones that are in the trenches. And I needed to hear more from them.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley. Are there any other comments?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I do want to speak to that as well. I know we get some reports from the WJCA and some climate surveys, and there's stuff that has kind of got us to this point. I'm not ignorant to those type of things, and I don't think Ms. Henley is either. And I think people have mentioned or I've heard we have data. There's things that we've produced, and I've read 600 comments. I've read through the documents. I've read through some of the feedback sessions we've had. There's just stuff we're clearly a part of Ms. Ewing's budget, so we're not saying thanks for all that work and then not listening to it. I think that's really what we have in front of us here, and it's just a difficult choice of when we get to the point of what we get back from our funding partners and what does the state do and the federal government, which is not how a lot share, but it's important to think about. Every dollar counts here where the rubber meets the road. So thank you again, Ms. Hunley, for bringing that up. I wanted to mention it. I heard some talks about it earlier today, and it's not like people don't read on this board. We are well informed in these decisions, and we've heard a lot of discussion. It's just these are topics that we'd like to hear more about as we enter into the public comment periods. With the schedules out here, we start talking about $14 million, please. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Riffle. I would like to mention that it would be helpful as we're moving forward, and we are potentially making hard decisions, that we understand not just, we need these positions because that would be better, that we understand we need these positions because adding these positions in these classrooms at this school will produce these results. And I think that's something that the viewing public has been wanting to hear, and I think even our funding partners would like to hear as much as possible. I mean, it's not always one-to-one, but the goal of asking for this many new positions is to produce what results for the community, for the students. At the end of the day, we are in a business of churning out employable and educated students, and these are investments, and we need to know perhaps a little more specifically what to expect to come out on the other end as much as we can. So I think moving forward that would be helpful, especially with such a big ask. And I am looking forward to getting the healthcare numbers and then being able to see a similar slide from last year where we once we implement the compensation study where that puts different people at different levels with regard to healthcare increases. Because it is the desire of the board, if we're going to be asking for this much money, it's of course our desire to really make an impact for the teachers and staff that are working. It's not our desire to get a big number that then gets gobbled up by another big number. And so I know that we don't have that yet, and it's unfortunate that March is around the corner, but that is something I think will make a difference once we can get those numbers. And I would just echo Mrs. Hundley's and Mr. Riffle's call to people on the ground who are in our schools. What is it that you need? Obviously, everyone's going to want more compensation, but is it buses that show up on time or don't show up on time that's adding to additional strain? Is it the lack of TAs? Is it are there things we're spending money on that we don't need to be spending money on, and maybe we could put somewhere else? I mean, if that's the kind of conversation we could have, that would be great. If there are inefficiencies when it comes down to actual execution, that's something that we would love to know as well. So, excuse me, as we move forward, we will have one other budget work session, and I believe that's one more before we vote on it. So that's what we are.
Madam Chair, as people are reminding themselves about the requests for additional positions, there is some very specific data around some of the FTEs from our first budget work session in January. Mm-hmm. So folks may want to go back and refamiliarize. As an example, when we're talking about some of the teacher assistants or at the elementary level for behavior support, we've tried to inform the decision making around those 9 positions, and some of that information is captured in that presentation from January. Okay. Or things related to the restorative center, some of those kinds of scenarios, even the 2 gifted resource teachers. So some of that information is there. I think to your point, we can work on developing more specificity around potential assignment of that FTE to a potential school, because I think there is some interest around that topic. We'll work on putting some of those things together. Some of that's driven by student interest and the courses that students register for. It's also driven by some of the other challenges within buildings related to student enrollment. But I think we can give you some more specifics as we move forward.
I do have one question about AP exams. So there have been some comments that parents could pay for them, and I know that not every family can afford the cost of AP exams, so I'm not saying that I don't want them, but I was just trying to figure out, what did we do in the past? Did parents pay, or was it always that, or if you can afford, did they already pay and just not ask for the assistance? I've never been clear on that.
Part of the reason we're bringing forward paying for AP exams for all students that are enrolled in the AP course is because as a division we would mandate that if you take the AP course, you must take the AP exam. So one of the barriers to requiring that sometimes is the financing of the exam. So we would remove that barrier and insist that if you're in this class, you'll take the exam and we'll pay for it. Previously, WJCC did pay for AP exams, pulled that back out of the budget several years ago. You may also remember that the new accreditation model places a significant emphasis around students who are both enrolled in an AP course and then take the corresponding AP exam. And we believe that one of the ways for us to put our best foot forward relative to accreditation is to insist that students who are enrolled in the course take the exam. Currently, families will pay for AP courses. There is the option for some assistance for those students that receive free and reduced lunch. and can apply for that kind of scenario to not pay the full cost.
Thank you.
I actually have a question. Dr. Keever, do we have data that supports like how involved our students get when we pay for the exams? Is it more involvement? Is it similar? I know this can be an SBQ. It might be a further review, but I'm wondering if other divisions have taken similar measures and they've seen better results, or.
I would want to get some additional data together.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on the budget for this evening? Oh, Mrs. Sonner?
I'd like to tag on to his SBQ, which is what will the impact to our accreditation be, depending on the percentage of students that take the AP class and the exam, and so what number do we need to hit that helps impact? If you can figure that out from the new accreditation system, which hasn't been fully baked yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, Ms. Ewing. Okay, we are at board member comments. Let's see. Mr. Hosang, you want to start?
Sure. First, I just want to say, Beth, thank you for everything you do. I don't think any of this or all of this would be possible without you keeping all of us straight. So just know that we all thank you very much for everything you do for us. So thank you. And I just want to quickly mention the issue with the consent agenda tonight I had with number 7.09, the approval of the resolution R-8-25. And it has nothing to do with the resolution itself. It's because I'm an attorney, and on Friday there was a letter that came out from the Office of Civil Rights that has put limitations on what schools can do. In my reading of it, it's potentially putting us in financial liability if we go forward with some issues. I may be taking an overly conservative approach to this, but again, you can ask 10 different attorneys to interpret a law, and they're going to give you 10 different interpretations. But my read of this is it's potentially damaging to the school system, so that's why I could not vote for the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hosang. Mrs. Henley, are you able to go?
Speaking of our teachers, it was great to see the Teachers of the Year present tonight. And on February 14th, the Williamsburg Schools Foundation, we handed out over $40,000 in grants. I don't know exactly how many teachers got them. I was thinking at least 20, because some were coupled with, wrote the grant with 3 or 4 teachers together. So we have some very innovative ideas that I'm sure will be coming forth for a spotlight at some point. Second, last night I went to a basketball game. Bruton played Lafayette, and it was senior night for the winter sports, and it just made me think about how quickly this school year is going to go, and before you know it, we're going to be on Dog Street watching the parades, and then we're going to be on stage watching our students come across. And so if any students are needing any scholarship money, the Williamsburg Community Foundation scholarships applications are at all the high schools now, but the deadline is March 9th. And presently, Jamestown is in the lead with scholarships in, and War Hill and Lafayette need to start looking at some of those scholarships and applying for them. I really appreciate all of the community members that came out to comment about the renaming of James Blair. And we have voted to start that process. And I'm not really sure who the facilitator would be, but you know, I'm assuming there will be some type of person that pulls the committee together, and they will have, you know, ground rules for these courageous conversations that are going to happen. And you know, I think back when I was a teacher and we were discussing sensitive matters, you know, we had set the rules to have I statements, you know, to listen, to understand, and not just to respond, to respect others' opinions, to make sure that the impact of students is at the focus. You know, there will be some educating, I'm sure, that will be going on as they are listening. We want this to be a fair process with participants that will feel that they were respected, valued, and heard. And I hope no one leaves this process feeling that it was stacked either way. And that's what's very important to me, because we have had committees before and then questions come up. So if we stick to those basic things, I think that, you know, whatever comes forth from the committee will be, you know, something that we will have to be able to act on. And it's my understanding that anyone that wants to give input will know, you know, can send things to the committee for their consideration. And so I think that was it. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all my comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Hunley. Mr. Riffle?
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start with a little bit of a Randy report from the General Assembly, if I can. I think we alluded to a little bit of kind of some stuff, and the retirement of Dr. Herring slowed my roll on this one, so I'll leave it to Dr. Herring to, you know, she's still impeding my life. I'm just kidding. She's great. No, I'm not. We talked about that. I talked to her after the last meeting, and she's like, I know you wanted to talk about this, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to speak to it because she told me to. Okay. I'm excited to talk about the House and Senate budgets that have come out. I've mentioned it a couple times in other sessions. We've seen the support cap being lifted for the 2026 school year, which is exciting to see. We have additional funds for special education and teacher aid positions. And we've seen some rather unusual bills come through the House and Senate, which we got a little bit of that kind of talk when we were in Richmond during our conference. But I'm going to talk about the ones that actually kind of made it through the process so far. We have outlined the requirements for school boards to do like indoor air quality, which is interesting. So we talked about how we have certain requirements that the state will set for how air is used. And I know it's a topic we talk about here somewhat often with some of our buildings. And it's really just kind of outlining. We're actually within the requirements, so it's nothing to worry about here. But it's more just something that like, the state didn't have a real standard that was dealing with indoor air quality, just general school air quality. So it's kind of more of a interesting point there. They had a weird bill that actually died, but I thought it would be something because people talk about it a lot, like the required school members to all be elected. That died in the Senate Education, which should have died in maybe House privileges and elections, but it died in education, so that's a weird place for it to die. And then one more thing was talking about, we've clear with our topic of dealing with our internet and some of the things that have happened, that there are new bills that are kind of dealing with protections and student records and personal information of our employees. There's some new requirements coming out for that. So it's just encouraging to see their state house taking action, looking at other states and seeing how we can best kind of strengthen our policy here in the state. So I'm excited about it. Hopefully we've done our time in Richmond and heard some good things, some weird things, some bad things, but things are moving forward, I think, in our state to help our students, help our educators, and help our community kind of thrive and move through this thing we have here. It's a big moment we have, I think, as a division when we talk about the budget. So I'm excited about that. We haven't really been in schools much, so it's kind of hard to, talk about how cool and awesome they are. I'd like seeing the fun videos they post on YouTube and on social media. It seems like our kids are really enjoying their snow days, which is going to happen tomorrow. So we won't be having our student advisory committee tomorrow because school will be closed, which is sad, because it's maybe the best part of being a board member is just sitting in a room with, people who just want to talk about their days and how school's going, and then of course the activity we do with Ms. Smallpoint and Dr. Worley. So we'll reschedule, I'm sure. But, I do want to mention some of the misinformation we heard this evening on some of the just public comments that I know we're not supposed to speak directly to anyone individually, so I'm going to try to keep it as much as to what is kind of not something we should talk about. I'm a big process person. I understand how government works, and I really would wish people would watch maybe a previous episode of the school board meeting before speaking what they did. Typically, we have a process on how we rename our schools. We outlined that in the last episode, and we talked about how you actually need to be passed away for 10 years. So suggesting names of people who have not done that doesn't fit the requirement. We also heard people suggest that our scores are abysmal, or our students are not teaching, or we're not focused on education. That's not true. I mean, we have clear data in our past presentations the past year, like they can point to even our CTE scores and things like that suggest that our school division's on the rise and things have been improving. So I would suggest people take the time to really kind of look into what they're saying and not just kind of go with what they hear or how their things are going. But this is a place where we do our jobs. People do their jobs every day. And that's something I will defend as a board member, and I think many people in this dais will do the same. It really actually concerns me when our community thinks people in these buildings don't do what they're supposed to. Students are being educated, people are learning, people are improving, and students are finding a home here in WJCC. This is a board that does business, and sometimes often we kind of move into positions where we have to be a little later to this room. I work in a place where government does not run on time, and it's kind of how it works. It's the people's business. This is happening in real time, and it's concerning when people suggest that we're not doing our jobs because we're not in a room on time. There's a lot of things happening to this board and to our community that we have to spend time to think about, learn about, and make sure we're on that message, because our team is doing a good job every day. We meet twice a month in reality as a board, and it's really important for us to kind of understand where our leadership team is and how they're prevailing as a community, and really encouraging our staff and our students in our community and families that their students are safe, things are happening well, and really this is a testament to the transition. I think Dr. Keever, it's been a little bit of a difficult ride so far, but I think you all are doing great, and I really want to encourage our community that this school division is strong, things are going well, and I'm excited to see kind of our preliminary numbers for the SOLs and things that are coming out. So I'm encouraged every time I come into this room, and it's kind of hard to hear when people just kind of don't want to suggest and look at what we've been doing over the past decades. It takes your time. Please take your time to read up on this stuff. Please educate yourself on what we do as a board. We're not here to bicker or complain, we're here to get the work of the people done and help our students and help our educators do their jobs every day. So that's all I have, Madam Chair. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Ms. Chen?
I'll just briefly say I completely agree. So thank you. I was going to say similar comments to what Mr. Riffle said. I could not be more proud of our community, and so thankful and grateful to this week, Dr. Keever and our tech team and all of our staff and administrators. And then in the classroom on the ground, face-to-face time with students. I know from personal experience and just from talking to many families in the community, our students, despite the cyber incident, which is very serious, I think students were, for the most part, they were very engaged when they were in school, and that is a huge credit to the fact that we have systems in place, we have insurance, we have security, so we were prepared for this, and our teachers pivot and they go above and beyond every day to make sure that our students achieve academically, as well as last week was Kindness Week, so, shout out to our counselors and our teachers and just everybody in the building for making our students feel loved and accepted. Just want to make sure that I reiterate that, those successes on all levels. And then just two other things, I appreciate all of the comments and the passion about the feelings about the school renaming, and I'm glad that we have a committee so that we have a process for getting people's voices heard, and we can have a real discussion about the possibility. But I'd love to encourage the community to have that kind of passion around our budget and advocating with our funding partners. I believe strongly in this budget of need. As Dr. Keever mentioned, there have been presentations at our working sessions that go through sort of each of the reasons for the proposals and in each of these line items. And so that's really in terms of like impact in our community. I just have been telling everybody, write a letter or share your experiences with us, advocate with our funding partners, because we need this funding. And then the last thing I'll mention is as part of the math textbook committee, the materials will be in our classrooms for 2 weeks. So I encourage, not just the teachers to engage with it, but our community and family members who have kids in elementary school to get involved with the process and find out, what that's about. It's a big decision that's coming up and recommendation to the board. So we want to make sure we, as a board, are as well informed as possible to be able to support our students and their math achievement and give teachers what they need to teach our kids.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. Mrs. Donner.
I just want to say thank you to Mrs. Aller for all that she does for us as a school board. None of this would function without her. I also just want to say thank you to all of our speakers today. I really appreciate our students who came and spoke, because that takes a lot of courage as a student to come up and speak in front of a room full of people and talking to a panel of adults. I also want to appreciate a lot of our kids that were sitting in the audience today and learning. And that is how you learn about democracy and civics in action, by coming to these types of forums and events. So thank you to those students and those parents and guardians that brought them. Also to our teachers for the flexibility. I was trying to explain to my daughter that her non-tech school was how I went through 12 years of K-12, and she was shocked that one could learn without a computer. And I was like, yes, it's called a chalkboard. But so I just thank all the flexibility for our teachers for taking it old school, back to the, as my daughter likes to say, to the olden days in the 20th century. And also, I just want to say is we are, as a community grappling with things, right? As a community, it's hard. There's folks with different perspectives on things and people who think that their perspective is right, right, and have their reasons for it. And so I just appreciate the discourse that we had tonight. That is what a democracy is, and having space for all voices in that. And I also just want to kind of remind us, we're talking about who has the right to have a voice in the room. That taxpayers come in many different forms. And so while there are lots of taxpayers that pay property tax, a lot of our students who are at City of William and Mary, they pay sales tax, and those taxes from the city also help to fund our budget. So I think just to expand the aperture of who has the right to speak is that there are many people in this community. We have scholars at William and Mary. We have taxpayers of all different ages and perspectives. We have teachers, we have students. And so everybody who is sitting in this community in Williamsburg, James City County has a voice. And so we're just very grateful to hear those voices. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Donner. That was everybody, right? All right. Yes, I want to thank everyone that came out. We had a packed house when we walked in. I do apologize that we started late. But we did have a couple things that we had to take care of that were very important, and we were aware of the time, and we did not waste any of it. And so thank you to everyone who sat here and was patient, and we appreciate the comments that were made. Mrs. Donner actually said something similar to what I was going to say, and that is one of the things that's most important to me as we have this somewhat delicate and difficult conversation in our community is perhaps more than what the outcome is in the end, how we go about having this conversation. That will determine how far we've actually come. That will determine who we are as a community in 2025, because we are not just teaching yesterday's history to today's students, but we're also currently participating in tomorrow's history. So what is the story that's going to be told about Williamsburg, James City County from 2025 in future years, and how we treated each other and how we spoke to and about each other? There are differing opinions. There are different reasons for those differing opinions. And I would like to, just personally as an individual board member, like to lend my voice to creating a space where there can be differing views for different reasons without labels or without names, where we can work towards a more perfect union, which is what our goal should always be as we advance. And if we can create this, but there are two narratives, And if we can create a space where those narratives can come together and have discussions and try to understand each other, then that space is actually called freedom, where people can have opinions and voice them and still get along with their neighbor. So that is my hope for this process. I want to thank all the teachers of the year and acknowledge them. I know we do a much more formal and much more fun presentation for them in May, so I'm looking forward to that. That's very fun. But there are many awards that people earn because they try to earn a certain award. They try to win a race or win a game or win a contest. But these Teachers of the Year awards are not given because someone tried to win them. They're given because they just showed up every day and gave their very best without seeking acknowledgement, without seeking recognition, and their peers around them did recognize that. So I just want to commend them for everything that they have done every day of the year to earn that award. And again, we look forward to celebrating them more in May. And then I know it's been said, but just a shout out to Miss Aller, to Beth. She knows an infinite number of things. She remembers big things and little things. She's saved me from a lot of embarrassing situations where I would have forgotten something or didn't show up somewhere. So she's, and like I said, she's just a very pleasant person, and that makes a difference when you are interacting with someone on a pretty regular basis. And we really appreciate you. And I think that it would be, we'd be lost if you weren't here, and if you had a different personality, the whole board would feel different. So we appreciate you. And I think that's all I had for tonight. Wrong one. Hold on. Upcoming events. The School Liaison Committee will meet on 2/28/25 at 1:15 p.m. in room 300 of the Annex. The Special Education Advisory Committee will meet on March 12th at 5 p.m., also in room 300 of the Annex. And the Career Ready Advisory Committee will meet on March 19th at 3:30 p.m. in room 108 of the School Board and Central Office, so the first building. Upcoming meetings, that's a lot. Closed session on March 4th will start at 4 p.m. in room 300 of the Annex. That will be followed by work session and action items with pre-budget public hearing, also March 4th at 4:30 p.m. in room 300 of the Annex. So this is our work session. We normally do not have public comment during our work session in that room in the Annex, but because we're having a pre-budget public hearing, there will be public comment on the budget only. So if you would like to speak to that, please come, and we'd like to hear your comments. Our joint meeting with City Council in Williamsburg and James City County Board of Supervisors will take place on March 14th at 8:30 a.m. at the James City County Rec Center. And then on March 18th, we will start our closed session at 6 p.m. in room 300 of the Annex and follow that up with our regular meeting here at 6:30 p.m. James Blair Middle School Gymnasium. We will try to be here at 6:30 p.m. And we have a special call meeting on March 19th at 12 p.m. in room 300 of the Annex. That is the complete list for now. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.